Welcome back. Now, British society is dominated by the privately educated. That's according to the Education Secretary himself, Michael Gove, who says the imbalance is morally indefensible. Well, Tory backbencher Nadine Dorries has accused the government of being too posh, and this week Nick Clegg will launch an initiative to try to break the grip of public schools on the British establishment. So does a private education make you more likely to be successful? I'm joined by Nadine Dorries and the former Transport Secretary and Labour peer Lord Adonis. Conservative MP Nadine Dorries, as I say, and we've got the leader of UKIP, the United Kingdom Independence Party, of course, Nigel Farage. Well, let's put it out there, morally indefensible. And I mean, Lord Adonis, are we too posh? Are we dominated by the posh in this society?
Half of all students at Oxford and Cambridge went to public schools, so it's no surprise that they dominate the elite. The big issue facing us, of course, is how we systematically improve state schools so that we get that half down because the quality of the state schools is improving. That is happening.
But I mean, do you agree with Michael Gove's analysis at the moment? Too many of them.
It's a straight fact that they dominate society. But you can take two views of this. You can hold up your hands in horror and say it's terrible, or you could do something about it. And I've been in the business for the last 20 years of trying to do something about it. And the only way you can tackle this systematically is by investing in state schools, improving the quality of teaching, because it's no surprise that the private schools have most of the best teachers. Why? Because of the salaries they pay and because of the status that they've got. We've got to systematically deal with the roots of why state schools haven't been performing so highly. And once you deal with that, they get the A-levels, they go to university,
some people will say, is that
just
envy? You want to break that virtuous circle?
It's fairness. It's not envy, it's fairness. What you want to do is to give everybody an equal chance. And that can only happen by the state schools being as good as those private schools.
Let me put it another way. I mean, Nadine Dorries, you know, you've accused your leaders of being too posh, don't know the price of milk and all the rest of it, price of a pint of milk. Does it matter if they're any good?
Well, can I just say, Andrew, you were saying exactly what you've just said now. For the entire 13 years that Labour were in power, and you were actually designing and implementing education policy. And I think what has been proven today is that it's failed, and that's not the right way to go about it.
On the broad issue, if we accept that something's wrong in the education system, let's not point fingers because we can be here all day long. In terms of, does it matter where you were educated, if you're any good at the job? Does it matter where the Prime Minister and the Chancellor were educated?
It absolutely matters, because I can, if you look at organisations, large organisations like the BBC, banking, the creative arts, anywhere where it's highly paid, successful industries, most of the people who are being recruited into those industries have been through the private sector. The problem is that we used to have a grammar school system where state children were able to go to a school where the brightest, you know, the 20–25% brightest in an area could be educated and compete. The issue is today is that we have a homogenised state education system, and we have private schools, independent schools, who teach to an incredibly high standard. So when organisations like the BBC want to employ somebody, they want the best, and the best are coming from the private sector. The state sector children cannot compete. And so what we need to do is we need to stop the Labour-imposed ban on grammar school education and bring back
Well,
we've continued it.
Private schools, or leave them alone and try and make the state schools better.
I tell you this, the private schools have got better. You know, I went to a private school, Dulwich College in South London. When I was there, 50% of the boys that were there, in fact, were there on assisted places, so we had a mixture. We were like a super grammar. 25 years on, my son went there. There are now no assisted places, and it's all about money. But I have to say, the standard of education, not just academically, but in terms of learning about sport and the rest of life, in the private sector is brilliant. The last thing we should do is try and tear that down. What we have to do is to give those that are able the best opportunity. Now, I think getting rid of the grammar schools is probably the biggest mistake we've made in terms of social mobility in this country in the last half a century. There are just 164 grammar schools left in this country. And I think what we need to do is selection. Andrew Neil did a very good documentary about this.
Yeah.
When you go to a selective school, you are told, regardless of the fact your parents haven't got money, you're as good as anybody, and we've lost that.
OK, I mean, and it comes back to you, Andrew Adonis. I mean, you both our other guests have made that charge there, that really it's the grammar school system having gone that means that everything else is
the best comprehensive schools perform as highly as grammar schools for their best students.
They don't perform as well as the independent schools.
Andrew,
when it comes to the
independent
schools, the best, including in places very close to where many of the public schools are. There's nowhere in the country where standards have risen higher in state education than in London. But we do need, when it comes back to the independent schools, Nigel is right. Nigel is right. They have improved in the last last 20 years. They have. But let's be clear why. They spend twice as much per head, twice as much as state schools. They have class sizes which are half the size, and of course they not only select by ability, they select by class. Let's be clear what happens in the private schools.
They're largely that's not true.
Money and class.
But can we come back?
Is pretty close.
Can we come back,
Dulwich, a school I know well.
Can we come back to the inner cities?
The son is basically, Dulwich is basically full of the children of the professional classes. Now that is a fact. There's no point trying to say it isn't true. It is.
But what
the issue for us is how we get to state schools.
The mother or father who sends their child to that school may have come from a pretty poor background, done well, made their money and invested in their child's education.
But Andrew, when I was at Dulwich, we had people there from working class backgrounds because local authorities would pay for their school fees because these people won scholarships. And your argument about the inner cities, a friend of mine is a governor of a school in Croydon, a comprehensive in Croydon, in which there are currently spoken 57 different languages. Now, I'm sorry, it's as much as the school can do to organise its affairs, let alone to give its bright people the best opportunity.
I just want to refocus it slightly with Nadine Dorries here, because you I know came through purely through the state system. Have you become such a success because or in spite of your education? Was it a good education system?
My education was absolutely appalling. It was dreadful. It was in the 1970s and it was completely uncoordinated. I don't know, I've never actually analysed that. But what I do know is that there were many children on my council estate who went through the grammar school system and have become blisteringly successful, are high earners, and now are sending their children through the independent sector because there are no grammar schools for them to send their children to.
It all comes back to that. I looked at some, we've done the analysis of the current cabinet and the current front bench, and indeed it must be said some on the opposition benches and the number of public school educated MPs, senior MPs there are. But if you look back to the 70s and those Wilson cabinets, they were, as Nadine Dorries is saying, they were coming through the grammar schools, but it still was the state system.
The pool has gone, the pool of talent has been removed.
Yeah, it's very important not to sort of romanticise the past. The elite has always been dominated by the public schools. This isn't something new.
This changed, Andrew. This changed, didn't it? With this change with Wilson, with Heath, with Major, the grammar school people were getting to the top, and now they're not.
Actually, I'm afraid even then it was the private school elite that ran the country. The issue, of course,
they may have run the country, but there was a fair representation at other levels of people from the grammar school system. What you did was you took away the opportunity for kids from my council estate to become leaders of the future.
Nadine needs to ask why is that her government, it's a Conservative government that's in office at the moment, is not bringing back the grammar schools. Why? Because there would be one hell of a row in these communities if you started saying to 3/4 of the people, including a good proportion of the local middle class, that they can no longer get into what is regarded locally as a good school. That in most of these communities, there are now excellent academies and comprehensive schools. The issue isn't that there aren't good schools and they're getting good results. It's how do you steadily increase the numbers who are achieving at the highest levels.
Point across, and we are running out of time as ever, but there is that point. There are some great comprehensive schools, but again, the sharp-elbowed middle classes, nowhere to move to get in there and get that education for nothing.
Well, that certainly happened, isn't it? And but there's nothing wrong with parents wanting the best for their children. We shouldn't condemn that, which is probably why Diane Abbott sends her boy to a private school, and lots of people do that. I think the point is this. This isn't a Labour-Tory argument. The entire political class in this country, Labour, Lib Dem and Conservative, have decided to turn their backs on the brightest kids from the poorest backgrounds, and that, I think, is a tragedy.
OK, Nadine, you have to answer the charge there from Andrew Adonis. What are you doing then in government if so many of you there are such fans of the grammar school system?
I thought Michael Gove's speech yesterday was quite significant. The fact that he's acknowledged that the poor children are staying poor and the rich are getting richer. And I think that was quite a very profound statement. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see policy develop on the back of that. Because, if anybody can do this, Michael Gove can do it.
Well, but I mean, what you're getting is, and it's an extension of Labour's programme, of course, is academies, free schools. But then everyone's getting really confused about which ones are good. Why can't they all be good?
Well, but none of them are as good as the independent sector.
Many academies are performing at an outstandingly high level, including a number of academies which are sponsored by private schools. What we need to do to bridge this divide is to get our best schools, whether they be state or private, to systematically take charge of the management of underperforming comprehensive schools, so that you get the good quality teaching, the high aspiration, and you start delivering the results.
Every one of those academies...
the government's job is to see that you have the schools well run.
But every one of those academies and every one of those free schools would like the ability to select on ability,
no, they would not.
And they're being denied that.
That is not actually true. What they want, what they need is the resources to succeed, and that's the job of the government.
OK, select on ability or not in 10 seconds, Nadine Dorries?
Absolutely. Select on ability. We should, the government just take its hands off it and let grammar schools expand and let schools select on ability, and the market will just sort itself out.
OK, well, thank you all very much indeed. Illuminating debate, I hope, for our audience there, Lord Adonis, Nadine Dorries and Nigel Farage there.